We're using Jupyter Notebooks here for teaching purposes. Jupyter Notebooks are not my development environment. I use Jupyter Notebooks for data analysis, for teaching, but if I develop code, I might use a Jupyter Notebook to try something out quickly, and I really love the time it method, but I usually use an IDE. Now, IDEs really people think of different things when they hear IDE. Some are perfectly happy with an editor that supports some features like auto-completion of code, jumping around in code, maybe even giving you some documentation. That VI can do. I'm sure Emacs can do it too. Lots of editors actually can do that in the meantime. And the lines are really blurring. I mean, is Visual Studio Code an IDE or an editor? So there are some features that I expect in an IDE. Syntax highlighting and auto-completion with tooltips in some form I want to have in an IDE. I expect a tree view of the files, methods, and variables, or at least the ability to display something like that. I should be able to run my Python code directly from the IDE, and I also should be able to debug it from the IDE. And debugging will actually be the next notebook. And actually, these days, I expect that it also does version control. And usually, if they integrate version control, they integrate the popular ones like Git, SVN, or Subversion, Mercurial. And there are a number of IDEs that support Python. And I keep jumping around between them, at least somewhat. KDEVELOP is currently my favorite C++ IDE. And its Python support is also quite decent, although there are some pitfalls, because some of this auto-completion for Python 3 allows you to auto-complete Python 2 methods that don't exist in Python 3 anymore. I ran into that with dictionaries a while back. But other than that, it's actually quite good. And this has all the features that I just mentioned. Visual Studio Code is really up and coming and getting better and better, and it's currently the only free IDE that I know that allows you to debug mixed code. This afternoon, we'll spend some time on language bindings, and with Visual Studio Code, you actually have an IDE that allows you to debug a code that goes from Python into C and back, or C++ and back. There are workarounds for the others, but it's not easy. It also allows remote debugging. Olaf's favorite editor, Eric.
Recently, I'm using KDEVELOP as well.
Okay. It's a great Python editor with a horrible documentation.
What's about it is horrible? It's in existence.
No, it has a very good API documentation. The question is, how do you figure out the features that it has from that? Yeah, but it actually does do all the things that I listed for an IDE, if you can figure out how. PyCharm exists both in a community edition and a commercial version. It's focused on Python and web development. It has some really cute tooltips and also integrates error messages directly in your source code. Some people like it, some people don't. I think it's kind of interesting. It handles the new type hints. And what I actually find quite interesting, what some of these IDEs do in the meantime, they handle type hints given in doc string comments. They do too. There's more IDEs. There's Eclipse with PyDev. There's Spider, although I never really got warm with Spider. There's Wing IDE, which is commercial. On Windows, Visual Studio is actually a good Python IDE. They have really improved their Python support in the last couple of years. The Visual Studio Community Edition is free. If you use it for open source projects, you're allowed to, I think, even in a commercial environment, but read the licenses or the license conditions yourself. Yes, Microsoft is supporting open source development with their tools. Who would have thought? I know they are now one of the largest contributors on GitHub. That's why they bought it. And there's actually an overview of integrated development environments on the Python wiki. So if you don't like any of these, go through the list. Maybe you can find your favorite. Yes?
One question. These IDEs...
Stop.
I was wondering, how many of these IDEs can be installed via Conda? None.
Can be used with Conda?
Can be installed via Conda, because one of the issues in my organization is that it's not so easy to install whatever package you would like.
Conda is actually now integrating, at least under Windows or in general, Visual Studio Code.
Okay.
The others, I don't know. I don't think they come with Conda. Spider? Okay.
Perhaps you can spend a word on remote. Which of those have remote?
Okay, Olaf's favorite topic. Remote debugging.
Or editing.
Remote debugging or editing. Now it's getting worse. All right. Eclipse. So if you want remote debugging, let's start the other way around. Of course, you can use Vim on your terminal, and thus use that also on a remote cluster. The ones that are listed here, Visual Studio has support for remote debugging, and Visual Studio Code inherits that from Visual Studio. It's done via the PTVSD module. Eclipse, as I said, has it. PyCharm has it in the commercial edition, but not the community edition. I think the commercial license is around 150 euros, which I think is a little steep. Visual Studio itself, of course, does. I think Eric actually can do it, but I never quite figured out how.
Nor did I, and I tried for more than a year. So.
See, where am I? KDEVELOP can do remote editing, but remote debugging is really a pain, and I haven't gotten it to work properly yet either. All right, more questions about IDEs. I wasn't expecting questions about IDEs, actually. But all right. No? Let's go to debugging then.